But first, Rocco, who
Okay.
teaches, please, go ahead.
Well, thank you very much for coming. The talk this afternoon, of course, is when is a drug not a drug according to the FDA. And I would like to start with the medical and legal definition of what is a drug. It is any substance intended to cure, treat, mitigate, prevent, or diagnose a disease. And this is the universally accepted definition of what a drug is. If aspirin cures headache, it's a drug. If morphine reduces pain, it's a drug. And what substances are drugs? Basically, three different groups. Prescription drugs, over-the-counter, called OTCs, and some vitamins and minerals are considered drugs. What regulations are prescription and OTC drugs required to meet? And I will focus in this talk on OTCs, but nonetheless, the rules are the same for both. All prescription and over-the-counter drugs must comply with the three FDA regulations of truth in labeling, safety in humans, and efficacy proven for the intended use. Basically, the law says that whatever is in the box or in the bottle must be disclosed on the label. Secondly, you must prove that it is safe for use in humans. And number three, if you say that it cures a headache, you need to prove it, efficacy. And those are the three main rules under which the FDA judges and examines and licenses all prescription and over-the-counter drugs. Something you may be familiar with from class is that prior to being sold, all prescription and over-the-counter drugs undergo all of the following: studies in animal models, phase 1, 2, and 3 human clinical trials, and then phase 4, which is the phase that covers the monitoring of drugs while they're being sold on the market. So aspirin, for example, is under phase 4 clinical trial right now to ensure that problems do not develop with the drug. As a side note, about 30% of all drugs that begin this process of proving safety and efficacy, a little less than 30% survive. The vast majority, over 70% of drugs that begin this process, fail. Before truth in labeling, the three largest selling drugs in the United States in 1901 was phenacetin, trademark name phenacetin, we now call it Tylenol, aspirin, which is a trademark name, and heroin. Heroin is a trademark name. These three drugs were the largest selling drugs in the United States in 1901, and they were available without prescription over the counter. Because there was no truth in labeling legislation, there was no FDA, the manufacturer did not need to put the content, did not need to tell us what the chemical or drug was in this bottle labeled phenacetin, aspirin, or heroin. Here are two ads that are readily available showing typically glycoheroin from Smith, a very, very popular over-the-counter liquid form of heroin being sold for coughs, bronchitis, cystitis, whooping cough, pneumonia, asthma. Mothers were giving heroin in liquid form to their babies for teething, colic, sleep problems, and of course it worked, number one, and number two, we were creating thousands of heroin addicts because of it. Truth in labeling said that Hamlin's Wizard Oil did not have to disclose what the oil was or where it came from. Mrs. Winslow's soothing syrup for teething was in fact morphine sulfate. Parker's tonic, who knows what was in it. This is the front cover of Collier's Weekly magazine, and I noticed in the Ken Burns series on Roosevelt, last evening or the night before, he actually reproduced this cover as I'm doing here. In 1906, a reporter named Adams began investigating the problems with the lack of truth in labeling, meaning we don't know what's in the bottle, and yet we're being told it works. He investigated this, ran a series of articles in Collier's, and it outraged the public to the point where Theodore Roosevelt, the subject of Ken Burns's current documentary, Theodore Roosevelt initiated and started and pushed through Congress legislation that created in 1906 the Food and Drug Administration. The truth in labeling by 1932 was law of the land. Whatever's in the bottle, you have to tell us. Well, needless to say, glycoheroin now had to be labeled in small print. Diacetyl morphine. No mother was willing to feed morphine to her 6-month-old baby. The sales of glycoheroin and hundreds of other products dried up because of it. Unfortunately, there were no rules governing safety, the second major issue with regard to FDA regulations. And in fact, this is a book that was published in 1932, which I have, called 100 Million Guinea Pigs. And the 100 million referred to the population of the United States in 1932, and the book said that we are being poisoned because we don't know if the products that are being sold to us are safe. Massengill Pharmaceutical, which is an ethical pharmaceutical company in Bristol, Tennessee, and now continues to sell products over the counter, they produced the world's first antibiotic in liquid form. And the world's first antibiotic was, in 1937, sulfonamide. It predated penicillin by almost 10 years. And sulfonamide came as a large pill. Children with strep throat could not swallow the pill. So Massengill got the idea of making a liquid form of sulfonamide. They hired a chemist named Watson, and they produced this elixir concoction of strawberry flavoring, sulfonamide, and unfortunately, they used as the diluent diethylene glycol, a compound today that we call antifreeze. It was released to the market, and over 105 children, mostly children, died because of it. There was no requirement for safety. The president at the time was Franklin Roosevelt, and he pushed through Congress the second major legislation. If this product had been tested on just one rabbit or one rat, it would have shown that it was a poison, and it would have prevented the deaths of over 100 people, mostly children. Finally, efficacy, the last piece of the FDA legislation now in existence. And that came about in 1960 when the European manufacturer of a sedative called Kevidon, trademark, applied to the FDA for a license to sell the drug in the United States. The reviewer of the application was Dr. Frances Kelsey, and she had only 2 rules to make sure the drug was in compliance with. 1, truth in labeling. When the pills were examined, they were Kevidon, and they were 10 milligrams. Secondly, safety in humans, and she was never satisfied that the drug company had produced sufficient safety data to prove that Kevidon was safe. It's a classic story in a standoff between the FDA and the drug company, and Dr. Kelsey was under tremendous pressure from the drug companies, but she never gave in. She held her ground. And it's fortunate that she did. Kevidon turned out to be the drug thalidomide. And thalidomide, as you know, when taken in the first trimester, results in babies with phocomelia, or seal limbs. The long bones failed to grow. And 7,000 children in Europe died because of Kevidon, and 7,000 were born without arms and legs. They're still alive today. It has cost billions to provide support for these 7,000, mostly English, English, Italian, Germany. But the drug was never sold in the United States because of Frances Kelsey. And she received from John Kennedy the highest award that one can bestow on a civilian in the United States. And Kennedy took the opportunity to push through Congress the efficacy laws. The mood of the country was such that we came so close to a major tragedy in drug misadventure with thalidomide that he was able to push through Congress the Kefauver Amendment, the Kefauver-Harris Amendment, and it instituted the final and third major piece of FDA legislation, and that is all manufacturers must prove that the drug works. Now that would not have saved the thalidomide issue, but again, he took advantage of the mood of the country and was able to institute the third and final major piece. In 1962 through 67 alone, over 3,000 drugs were removed from the drugstore shelves because efficacy could not be proven. And the review for efficacy of over-the-counter drugs is continuing to this day. And every year or so, there's another list of drugs that are taken off the market because although the labels are true, although they are safe, they've not been proven to work. I remember as a very young man in the 1960s going to the drugstore and seeing large areas of shelf completely empty, not because the drugs had been sold out, but because they had been removed from the market. And this was going on all through the 1960s throughout the country. Okay, by the 1990s, over-the-counter drugs, herbal medicines, and dietary supplements had become a billion-dollar industry. And the FDA was beginning to review them for truth in labeling, safety, and efficacy. But the herbal medicine industry fought back, and they fought back hard. The problem is, it costs money and takes time and major resources to prove safety and efficacy for any drug. And they didn't want to spend that money. Senator Orrin Hatch, the senior Republican senator from Utah, came to the rescue. And he held hearings in Congress and put together what's called the 1994 Hatch Amendment to the FDA regulations. Senator Hatch was a little bit disingenuous in that he did not disclose that he had part ownership in an herbal medicine company, but nonetheless, he was able to push through Congress the legislation that we now have, and no other country in the developed world has it. And the legislation basically says the following: no efficacy, no safety, and only limited truth in labeling is required if you call your product a dietary supplement or an herbal medicine. It opened up tremendous opportunity, both good and bad. And I would like to review a few of these products and review for you the only 3 concessions that the FDA was able to achieve. 1, there is truth in labeling. If the herbal medicine is Ma Wong, you must put Ma Wong on the label. So truth in labeling still applies. 2, no mention of a disease. You cannot use the word disease or name a disease in any way whatsoever. And 3, all labelings, and I should say that the legal term of label in pharmacology is the sticker on the bottle, the advertisement on the internet, an advertisement in a magazine, a flyer or brochure are all considered a label for any drug. Doesn't matter what it is, aspirin or morphine. The label is anything. Any printed or electronic transmission of information about that drug is considered a label. All labels for dietary supplements and herbal medicines which are not reviewed by the FDA for safety and efficacy, which have had no safety and no efficacy studies, must contain the following. These statements have not been evaluated by the FDA. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent a disease. And you see how we've come around to stating in these legalese terms that we are telling our patients this is not a drug. Here's an ad that I pulled from probably the New England Journal of Medicine on Donepezil, which is a widely used drug to treat Alzheimer's. It is an acetylcholinesterase inhibitor drug, and when the patient takes the drug, it raises acetylcholine levels in the brains of the patients. An increase in acetylcholine levels is believed to, and has been shown and proven, to retard the progression of Alzheimer's. It doesn't cure it, but it slows down the progression. It is the most widely used class of drugs to treat Alzheimer's and dementia. If I have an herbal medicine that I want to sell to improve cognitive performance, if I have an herbal medicine that I want to sell to treat Alzheimer's, how do I do it when I cannot say the word Alzheimer's? If I have a medicine to treat incontinence, how can I do that without saying incontinence? And I will show you how that's done. This is Phosphatidylserine. This is an actual ad that I pulled, and you notice the attractive but elderly woman in the upper left. I forgot where I put my keys last week. The woman on the right holding a phone to her ear. Yesterday I forgot a number that I've dialed for years. And the old man on the left, I forgot where I put my glasses last night. The marketing trick is that we cannot use the word Alzheimer's, but we show the disease. It's brilliant. It is brilliant. Don't say the disease, show it. And let the patient fill in the blanks. Oh my God, Martha, this is for Alzheimer's. Let's go to GNC and CVS and get some. Originally, phosphatidylserine was extracted from cow brains, but that was banned because of mad cow disease. Now, PS is extracted from cabbage or soybeans. And because there is no requirement for safety or efficacy on the label, I went ahead and just looked up a 2001 clinical trial on phosphatidylserine, the product that we just saw being advertised to help Martha remember my phone number. The clinical trial consisted of 120 patients, a decent number. There was placebo control, and there were two groups of treatment, a 300 milligram and a 600 milligram of phosphatidylserine on a daily basis. And the results from this clinical trial in the journal I've cited states, no significant differences were found in any of the outcome variables between the treatment groups. In conclusion, a daily supplement of PS does not affect memory or other cognitive functions in older individuals. And here is the gist of my talk today. It's the contradiction that exists in what we have here in the United States and in no other developed country. Products that have shown to not work are being sold as if they worked because there's no requirement to prove they don't work. NeuroPS was studied by the FDA and the Food and Drug Administration. The results of this massive study was, our conclusion is that there is not significant scientific agreement that PS may reduce the risk of dementia or cognitive dysfunction in the elderly. One could go on and on. A second example that I'd like to bring to your attention is phytosterol to lower cholesterol. And this is an important point that will bring me into the current products on the shelf. Eli Lilly and many of the other ethical pharmaceutical companies produced phytosterol. Phytosterol is a sterol compound extracted from the residue left behind when you press plants to remove the juice or the sugar. So for example, you can purchase the cane from cane sugar, or the pulp from oranges that are left, and from that you can extract out the phytosterol. Phytosterols were felt at the time in 1960, for example, to lower cholesterol levels. And in 1960, Eli Lilly did not have to prove it. This was before John Kennedy's Kefauver-Harris amendment requiring that you prove it works. So Eli Lilly can prove that it's safe. That's a no-brainer. You're eating orange pulp. They can prove truth in labeling. That's a no-brainer. We're telling you it comes from pineapple pulp. We do not have to prove it works. Therefore, we and every other ethical pharmaceutical manufacturer like Bayer and Lilly and Pfizer sold phytosterol to lower cholesterol. Here is an ad I found in a reputable journal called Circulation, the Journal of the American Heart Association, in January 1960. Efficacy did not become law until '62. And here is the ad showing the man filling up at a buffet table and being told, you're free to choose foods according to taste. Because the idea, the concept behind phytosterol is that if you supplement your diet with this extract from natural plants, then it will, the phytosterol, block the absorption of cholesterol from the food. So you can eat anything you want and your cholesterol levels will go down. In 1962, with Efficacy, all manufacturers like Lilly and Pfizer stopped selling phytosterol. They knew they could not prove it worked. In 1994, phytosterol came roaring back, and today this is an ad from a magazine. Twin Lab provides superior answers to your heart health questions, and the box on the left, on your left, here is reduces cholesterol by 24%. Use Cholesterol Success Plus, clinically proven to reduce cholesterol up to 24% with an asterisk to a reference in a journal. I'm impressed. You've got proof that it works. I want to see it. Now remember, 99.99% of our patients will not do what I did. Go online, find the journal, and read it. If the ad says there's an article that proves it works, they're getting away with it until they get caught. Here's the article. There's the actual citation, which they claim they provided in their ad. American Journal of Clinical Nutrition, 1999, by Jones and others. And here is the key results. Phytosterol, after 30 days, reduces the cholesterol level significantly. You see the patients on a placebo, the control, their cholesterol has dropped, but not significantly. And yet the phytosterol has reduced the cholesterol statistically significant from the controls. What they don't tell you in the ad, and what everyone in medicine and pharmacology knows, is that at the end of 30 days, by the second month, your cholesterol bounces back. If you want to lower your cholesterol for 30 days, here's the answer. After 30 days, it will no longer work, and you'll be right back where you started. This is what our patients are being sold. This is the con job that is being delivered to our patients. Centrum Silver from Pfizer is one of the landmark issues with regard to the 1994 legislation, and is an important piece of my presentation here today. When Twin Lab, or two individuals in Laguna Beach, want to start selling saw palmetto, it's a no-brainer. They can do it out of their garage, they can make a ton of money, and it's totally legal. I'm sympathetic with them. I too would love to drive a Maserati. When Pfizer does it, I'm appalled. When Pfizer and Lilly and Bayer do it, get in on the action, I'm appalled. I'm depressed as a clinical pharmacologist. The last bastion that we had hoped for to receive truth in labeling in the full sense of the meaning of it, they've now given up. And the answer is quite simple. There's too much money to be made. There's just too much money. So we see reputable pharmaceutical companies like Pfizer producing the new brand of Centrum Silver, one of their multivitamin products which has been around for years and years. A little closer look at the box, which I have here, shows in fact heart health, brain health, eye health, and muscle function, none of which are diseases. So they've met the requirement. We never said myopathy, we never said retinopathy, we never said cognitive disorder, we never said cardiovascular disorder, we said heart health. A meaningless, non-medical term. But if our patient has a heart problem, this has to be the answer. It says heart health, and I want a heart health. Do you see the deception that they are practicing on our patients? I think it's unconscionable for a company like Pfizer to do it, but I understand why they're doing it. The secret ingredient, well, not secret, but the label is quite clear. It's Lycopene. They've added the dietary supplement Lycopene to their mineral and vitamins supplement called Centrum Silver and created this new brand, this new mixture of the old and proven efficacious vitamins necessary for life as we know it, with an unproven, with regard to efficacy and safety, Lycopene. And they have merged these two worlds in one box. Lycopene is a carotenoid present in a wide range of human tissues. Lycopene may have increased antioxidant activity in vitro, but has never been proven in humans to work. Quote, no direct evidence that repletion of low lycopene levels has any benefit. And I took that from a book that I recommend to anyone interested in the field of dietary supplement and herbal medicines. And this is a herb and supplement handbook called The Natural Standard by Ethan Bash and Catherine Albright. And the reason I like it is because every single author, of which there are dozens who have contributed to this book, have signed under penalty of perjury a statement that says they have no financial interest in any product discussed within this massive catalog. Here, you can look up the drug and get what is believed to be the best evidence. The herbal medicine, the dietary supplement. They're not all in here because the number of new herbal medicines and dietary supplements that are coming along is increasing at a prodigious rate because of the lucrative nature of this business. The authors of this book, Natural Standard, they apply a code system to make life easy for our patients, which I commend them for. They assign an A, B, C, D, or X to the product, and they tell you what the code is. This particular page that I have reproduced, 438, 439, is for Lycopene, and as you can see, the entire listing is a C. C means no evidence. There's no evidence that it works. We're looking for A's. The number of A's in this book, of the hundreds that are in here, there may be 2 or 3 A's. Look for yourself. It's probably online. I'm sure you can Google or Nook it. Okay, so we've got Lycopene and we've got Pfizer on board. And as far as I'm concerned, their marketing potential and power is such that we're in for a long ride. All natural herbal teas, like everyday tea, detox. I see friends of mine have this in the kitchen, and we notice that, like all of the products I'm discussing today, I've circled it with a black magic marker. The words here are exactly what is required to meet the law. But in terms of the product that's being sold, it's a mixture of herbal concoctions of ginger and licorice and organic whatever, nutmeg, and I have no problem with that. Absolutely no problem. I encourage the drinking of this tea. Here's my problem. It is a detox. It promotes healthy liver function. What the hell does that mean? Just what does that mean? And the beauty of it, in terms of marketing, is that it means nothing. And that's the whole point, and that's what I find so offensive. Well, CVS is not going to let Pfizer beat them to the punch, so they've jumped in, as has Walgreens and the other large retailer,
Rite Aid.
Rite Aid, yes, and also the big retailer, the world's largest seller of Walmart. Walmart. But nonetheless, here I purchased this at CVS Pharmacy. It's called DHA, which is docosahexaenoic acid, or DHA, from schistocridium oil, and it's clinically proven memory improvement. And I brought the package with me, which I have, and I can pass it around. Ladies and gentlemen, I have the bottle here, and I have the package. I've used a magnifying glass, and I cannot see where it was published that it was clinically proven. Now, if I've missed it, I stand corrected before all of you. This is the back of the package, which I've examined in great detail, and it continues to claim it's been clinically proven. But it's not going to tell me where. I'm offended by that. And I feel strongly that we are being duped.
I think it's in formula, DHA. You're adding that to infant formula.
You're adding DHA to infant formula?
No, the formula manufacturers are adding, I'm pretty sure.
Yes, they are. They are. Here it's being sold as a supplement for adults. It's clinically proven, and I've enlarged the package to show you that they have met the requirements. These statements have not been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. This product is not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent any disease. Well, I went to JAMA, Journal of the American Medical Association, in 2010 and found this clinical trial on DHA and cognitive decline in Alzheimer's. And this was 124 patients, 2,000 milligrams per day, 171 received the drug for 18 months. Conclusion, supplementation with DHA compared to placebo did not slow the rate of cognitive and functional decline. And CVS is on board. Kava Kava is an herbal medicine extracted from Pipermethicium plants that grow in Polynesia, Tahiti, and used for hundreds of years as an anti-anxiety drug. And in fact, the kava lactones, which are present in the plant, are active ingredients that do act like tranquilizers in the CNS. But because it's a plant, you can sell it as an herbal medicine, and therefore avoid having to do safety and efficacy. And that's, of course, what's done. Kava Kava is a ceremonial drink that is served in the homes of men and women and families in Tahiti. Unfortunately, some patients have developed liver toxicity in response to Kava Kava, and so far there have been 30 reported cases of liver failure. The FDA has only issued warnings. Safety studies are not required. And ladies and gentlemen, from an academic point of view, in 1511, when a Tahitian boy drinks his first glass of Kava Kava and develops liver failure and dies, why did he die in 1511? before modern medicine, before pathology. He died, I would suggest, because he insulted his ancestors. He offended the moon god. And not because he drank kava kava, because his sisters drank it, his mother drank it, and they're fine. And so his genetic polymorphism that results in an adverse event is removed from the population. And after hundreds of years, Tahiti is free of those genetic polymorphisms and is totally safe and natural. And now, because of the 1994 legislation, we are feeding it and selling it to Latinos, Italians, Sephardic Jews, and we've got 30 deaths so far. I purchased this at CVS 2 days ago. You're free to open it and take some if you'd like. And there it is. Multivitamin 1 a day with Lycopene, and we're back on the Lycopene story, and Bayer Pharmaceutical, which has produced 1 a day multivitamin since 1940, has jumped on board. What I found interesting was the following. Bayer Pharmaceutical, which is a major multi-billion-dollar pharmaceutical company, and one of the smartest people in the world of medicine, they goofed and had to fix things up quickly. I purchased this box of 1 a day, which I have here, and it says normal blood pressure. And that sounds dangerous. That sounds close to breaking the law. Close to a disease. Well, I was able to purchase one of these misbranded, mislabeled, illegal boxes, and before I could whip off a letter to Bayer in the hopes they'd send me a check for $5,000 to shut up and go away, they fixed the problem. It's now called healthy blood pressure. Get it? Who's being fooled? Our patients. St. John's wort is an extremely popular and interesting herbal medicine. It is used to treat depression. It comes from a plant called Hypericum perforatum, and the plant is hung in homes, dried and hung in homes to ward off evil. And it's associated with St. John's feast day, June 24th. The word wort is a medieval word that means plant or herb. So St. John's wort is extremely popular because clinical trials have shown that the active ingredient in St. John's wort does have an effect in the CNS similar to conventional antidepressant drugs in mild depression. So, no surprise. There's a plant out there that has a chemical that acts as a tranquilizer. I'm not surprised. There's a plant out there that has a chemical that acts as an anti-inflammatory, and it's called aspirin. Aspirin was named after the plant that produced the chemical that acts as a pain reliever and an anti-inflammatory, the spirina plant. And they created the name aspirin from acetyl salicylic acid, which is the chemical, and they called it aspirina, aspirin, from the spirina plant. Well, this is a mild antidepressant, a mild tranquilizer found in a plant. I'm not surprised. Here's my concern. Drug-drug interactions, which we talk about in class so often. Drug-drug interactions are not required to be documented. There are no warnings to drug-drug interactions, as there are with aspirin, Tagamet, Captopril, Abilify, and morphine. All the product labels will list the drug interactions. The antibiotics that are used must list the drug interactions. But that's not required for an herbal medicine. So what do we have with St. John's wort? We have well-documented interactions with protease inhibitors. HIV patients whose lives are being saved by protease inhibitors, the protease inhibitors will stop working, no longer work, the minute they start taking St. John's wort. Birth control pills. For those folks, those women who are on birth control pills, I assure you that St. John's wort, which I have here, will cause the birth control pills to no longer work, and you will become pregnant. So, if you wish to become pregnant and your partner refuses to comply, you don't need to fight with him. Simply go to CVS, start purchasing St. John's wort, take it every day as required, as recommended on the label, and I will assure you, you will become pregnant. You can blame it, of course, on a miracle, and not on the fact that you did not take your birth control pills. This is from the National Center for Complementary Alternative Medicine, a division of the NIH, and this is documentation on the effect of St. John's wort on birth control pills. This is an actual study that was done, one of many in 2003. The ethanol estradiol, the active ingredient in orthonovum, was measured in patients before and after they started taking St. John's wort, and St. John's wort reduced the T1/2 from 23 hours, which is why it was safe to, why it was efficacious to reduce pregnancy to 12 hours. And here it is, you have the bottle, you're welcome to take it. Okay, in summary, I've given you a few examples. I'd like to end up here with summarize what I've presented and then open the floor for questions if I could. Why do smart people believe odd things? And part of the reason I believe is because we have an attraction to the word natural. Unnatural, something put in a bottle, made by a evil drug company, tends to turn us off, and I relate to that totally. But I remind all of our patients that unnatural does not always mean bad. Arsenic, polio, HIV, Ebola, nuclear radiation, and earthquakes are all natural. We need to use the word judiciously and reasonably. Traditional becomes another buzz term used by marketing. Nostalgia for the past is not always good. I've lived quite a number of years. I do not want to go back to the 70s. Bell bottom and disco did not turn me on.
Oh, come on.
I found it to be a waste of time. But nonetheless, I have no desire to go back to a world without the internet, the early 70s. I do not wish to go back to a world without Siri. Bloodletting, syphilis without penicillin, burning witches at the stake, electrotherapeutics. Traditional does not always mean good, and we need to be rational and reasonable about that. Finally, what are the problems with the herbals? One, the potential adverse reactions are not documented in the product insert. Buyer beware. For those of you holding the St. John's wort bottle, you will find nothing about birth control pills, not a word. You will find nothing to warn our HIV patients. The manufacturers of the protease drugs have black box warning. Do not take this with St. John's wort. But they're not required to put anything on the label. Buyer beware. I have never been convinced that any of these companies care about our patients. They care more about their Ferraris, and that's my opinion. Number two, safety and efficacy are not proven. I have friends who come over from Austria, a wonderful country. They fly whatever it takes, 14 hours to get here. Get off the plane and head to CVS, not to the bedroom to take a nap. They go to the local CVS and come back with bags full of products they cannot purchase in Vienna. It's the Wild West in America, and we look foolish because of it on the national stage. Kava Kava is banned in Europe. You cannot buy it. Number three, the potential to cause delay in traditional proven therapies can lead to potential harm for our patients. Their belief that the Lycopene is going to help their heart, that the DHA is going to retard their Alzheimer's, could prevent them, and often prevents them from seeking more traditional proven help. And finally, herbal and drug interactions, as I've mentioned, are not documented. They're not required. And if we're not required to do it, we're not going to do it. Thank you. I have email. May I answer any questions or take any criticism from what I've presented? Yes?
I think this applies to probably all of them, but it kind of caught my attention, the St. John's Wort. So I know that we're supposed to ask our patients if they take any herbal supplements or any vitamins and stuff, but for things that are that critical, do they, if you're giving a patient, if you're treating them for HIV, would you say, like, you can't take St. John's Wort, or would you wait until they said, I take St. John's Wort to tell them they shouldn't do that?
Well, I think that's a clinical decision that you will have to make in your practice. I can only speak for myself. I'm not a physician, but I would be rather aggressive. If I know a patient has the potential to take an herbal medicine that will adversely affect the therapy that I've started, yeah, I would be aggressive and make sure that they don't do it, as long as you have the evidence.
So I work in a clinic where we do birth control, and I've never heard that. And I've never told anybody, and people tell me all the time they take St. John's Wort, and we send them home to birth control.
Right. I think you need to convince yourself that it's real by checking the web and checking. There's a citation in my talk that is an actual study on orthonolamine, for example. So you need to look at each individual situation.
Oh, I totally agree.
Yeah.
They come in all the time, and they were taking their full every day.
Yeah. I mean, these are the issues that we need to deal with. And one other thing that I would like to say, your good question reminded me of it. When we ask patient, what other drugs are you taking? They, because of marketing, do not consider herbal medicines and dietary supplements drugs. When is a drug not a drug according to the FDA? You see the conundrum we're in? So the patient is taking DHA, or the patient is taking St. John's Wort or Lycopene or whatever. They're not going to say, I'm also taking that, because they don't consider it a drug. They're not being told it's a drug. It's not being marketed to them as a drug. It's very deceptive marketing, and we are the only country in the world in which we can get away with that.
I guess you ask.
Yes?
I guess you ask, are you taking any natural supplements or something? Use the, I don't know.
Well, I think that the aggressive physician that I go to once every 10 years for a checkup, he has told me in the last time, he said, or his office told me, put everything that you take in a paper bag and bring it in. And I thought that was pretty cool. Yes, sir.
Let me ask you this. I'd like to make a statement out here. Across the country, in the university setting especially, because of the anxiety of test taking, benzos have become quite an epidemic. Kava, have you heard anything about a lot of the, or a study out there about this being on in students' medicine cabinets?
We are all looking for anti-anxiety medication, whether it's me before giving a talk or students taking an exam. I once was a student, and I can relate to it. To obtain Valium or alprazolam or Xanax or any of the other benzodiazepines, which are effective, very effective anti-anxiety medications, one has to get a prescription or buy them illegally. On the other hand, for 1/10 of the price of a bottle of benzodiazepines, one can go to CVS and buy Kava, and I'm sure that has contributed to why that's become a multi-hundred-million-dollar industry or business. The problem, of course, is that you are taking a chance of drug-drug interactions with something you might be taking for which we don't know. So you're the guinea pig. You are the guinea pig. And number two, we don't know about your genetic polymorphism that could lead to drug failure, liver failure in particular. Not to belabor the point, but when a drug company wants to produce Valium, for example, as a tranquilizer, they will study it in the phase 1, 2, and 3 clinical trials. If one patient out of the thousands that are studied has a problem of any kind with their liver, that drug may never get approved. We may never see it. But here we have a product readily available that a 10-year-old could buy, and so far we've killed 30 people. Ephedrine killed 109 people before the Food and Drug Administration was able to go to federal court and get it banned. Why? And I don't know if I have the time for this, but ephedrine contains ephedra. It's extremely useful for treating asthma. For thousands of years, the Chinese have taken the dried leaves, put them in a boiling pot of water, put a towel over your head, and the child or adult breathes the steam. Ephedra relaxes the bronchial smooth muscle, and they breathe better. It's safe, it's efficacious, and the way in which it was used in China to this day is appropriate. In 1994, we imported, many entrepreneurs imported ephedra. Ma Wong is the Chinese name of the product, and produced it not as a dried leaf that you boil with water, but as a pill that you swallow in order to lose weight. Because one of the side effects of ephedrine is the same as epinephrine. It acts like an amphetamine. It burns off fat. You lose weight. You lose appetite. And so thousands and thousands of patients began taking this to lose weight, and it's how it was sold on the internet. The great wonder drug for herbal medicine for reducing weight. Steve Beckler, a $20 million a year baseball pitcher for, I believe, the Baltimore Orioles, dropped dead in front of 30,000 people. He overdosed on ephedra trying to get his weight down. 109 other patients of ours died from ephedra, and the FDA could do nothing about it. Safety and efficacy were not required. They had to go to special federal court, and it took them over 2 years to do it. It took them so long to do it while people were dying that in your lifetime, I was teaching here 3 years ago or 4 years ago, California banned it before the federal government was able to do it. State legislature put an end to it. I had students who were driving to Reno to buy it and bring it back prior to the federal banning. And then finally, I should end here. Ladies and gentlemen, this is how distorted this whole situation is. If you want ephedra, go to CVS. It's called Neosyneph. It's called Primatene, excuse me. It's called Primatene. It's been on the shelf for 50 years. It's still there. Why? Because it's used only to treat asthma and says nothing about weight loss and tells you not to take it except the way we show you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.